la mesa redonda de Roundtable desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Danny Ramos controlando el tablero, la máquina digital. Bueno, como siempre, noticias de Washington, noticias sobre COVID, noticias internacionales. We're going to look at some headlines from around the world, especially from Latin America. For that, I usually look at BBC News. And of course, we have other sources, New York Times, Washington Post, and whatnot. But because we have, and this probably should be the theme of today, we have good press, good media, especially newspapers and television. I would say that except for one network, the Fox network, most of the others will attempt at some kind of objectivity. Most of the other ones will not just blindly quote the president or the senator from their state and so on. And well, especially in this network, in this platform. On this platform, we try absolutely to be objective. There was no way to avoid being negative about the ex-president, the former president. There was no way to give a positive spin to the many lies that were being told every day, which fact checkers at the Washington Post had kept a record. And at some point it numbered 19,000 and then 21,000. And then in the end, I believe it was over 30,000 lies, exaggerations, or distortions. So we do have a good media. There is an adversarial relationship, no question about that, between the fourth state, the media, and the politicians. But that's the role of the media, is to look at what a politician, a president, a senator, a congressman, a mayor is doing, and analyze it, put in context, try to see objectively what benefits it brings, what a proposal brings, a law brings, and how does it help the people or damage the people? How does it protect the Constitution or damages the Constitution? So that's the role of the media, sort of a watchdog. A watchdog on top of other watchdogs. I mean, we through the 4 years of the Trump presidency, what the media did was, the networks did, the newspapers, was protect the whistleblowers, give them the space, give them the platform, and offer that platform, the same platform, for the opposite point of view to either politicians or other people who wanted to voice their opinion. And so in that attempt, we on this platform here, on Usa La Media, We have invited people of different points of view. We have invited people from the progressive side, and people from the right, people from the center. But here's where this nation is at this point, very divided. Hard to believe that at this point, not too distant, but distant enough from the November 3rd election. There are people who still believe, that Trump won the election and that Biden is not a legitimate president. There are people who believe that firmly. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. News in that context of people who still think Trump won the election. But we will look at other things that are happening. So this is the Roundtable, and this is a reminder for all of us that the media has to be protected, that even though during the Trump years, we were told, the public was being told that the media, the reporters, television, newspapers were the enemy of the people, that we play an essential role in this democracy, and we should be protected, the media should be protected. Give everybody the right to voice their opinions. And this is where we part company with some extreme points of view. There has to be limitations. There are limits to free speech, as we know. The famous line that you could not yell fire in a crowded theater, it still applies. So it makes a lot of sense, because you risk creating chaos. And so that still applies. We also have to be critical of each other, looking at other publications, looking especially looking at social media, because we know the effect that social media has had. Just keep in mind that as Twitter removed access from Donald Trump, there was this sense of relief. There was like a sudden change in the echo chamber of the nation, and all of a sudden there was no fear that we would wake up in the morning and look at some crazy pronunciation from the White House, where Trump at midnight decided he was going to do something outrageous just to keep his name in the headlines. And especially in the last days of his administration, as he attempted to change the results of the election, and that led ultimately to that January 6th invasion of the Capitol. More news about that today, actually, about the invasion of the Capitol. Because there are open investigations, because there are hundreds of people who have been captured around the country by the FBI, by different DAs in different states, and who are providing testimony about what was done and who did what and when, in regards to that attempt to at a coup d'etat, basically, on January 6th. And we know who led it. We have video of Donald Trump leading the masses, directing them to go to the Capitol. It's like, unless you, I don't know, you speak another language that nobody in the world understands, unless there is a real clear distortion of reality and we are all under the spell, believe your eyes and your ears when you see and hear Donald Trump saying to the Capitol rioters, go to the Capitol, I'll be there with you. And we know he didn't go there with him. We know these rioters, and secessionists, and I don't know, there are many names for these people. Criminals. They killed people. They killed people. Donald Trump should be held ultimately responsible for a lot of this. And, but you know what? It's like speaking another language, really, speaking another language to Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, to the Republicans like Jim Jordan, Senator Kennedy. Senator Kennedy, I already recently spoke about him and his very, very strange and thick Southern accent that Joe Scarborough makes fun of. But it's for a very well-educated man, and he puts on this Southern accent that he was just dragged out of the mountain. It's like, I don't know, caught in a mound of doodle as he takes each syllable and drags it on. So, like, yes, doodle, guano, whatever you want to call what he spills, because he spews lies continuously with that accent that makes him sound sort of innocent or naive or unsophisticated for a man who went to Oxford. So we don't know where he got the accent. Joe Scarborough continuously says, where is that accent from? How did he get there? So anyway, that's always a chance to inject a bit of humor, as also it's humorous to look at what is happening to the Republican Party, to see Mitch McConnell squirm and get red and sweaty. It's a strange video I saw. McConnell with a sort of a brilliant skin, and his 12 chins bathed in some strange light, and declaring that the party is unified when we know it's not. So we'll talk about that too, because there are news about that CPAC meeting. But we have a lot of news today from state and city, looking for some items from around the world where COVID is still playing a tremendous role in destroying the economies of many countries, and with the help of incompetent governors. So we're going to take a short break here in USA la Media, the Roundtable, la mesa redonda. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. No se vayan, regresamos en un momento. Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio. Señores oyentes de USA la Media, les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Estamos aquí en La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, en USA la Media. Bueno, amigos, estamos hablando de varios temas, entre ellos el hecho de que hay una prensa libre, una prensa responsable en este país, que a pesar de las acusaciones sin fundamento, acusaciones del gobierno de Donald Trump de que los medios somos enemigos del pueblo, cuando la realidad es que somos los únicos responsables de de tratar de mantener este gobierno por el camino recto, de tratar de pedir que respondan con seriedad a los asuntos de este país, a lo que a COVID, a la administración del gobierno, la administración del Tesoro, a Congreso, Senado, presidente, los medios por todas partes tratando de mantener presión sobre el gobierno para que actúe responsablemente. Entonces, de eso hablé en la primera parte de este programa y luego vamos a hablar específicamente de algunos otros temas en relación a eso. Bueno, vamos a ver qué hay de ciudad y estado en el día de hoy. Governor Tom Wolf has appointed former state treasurer Joe Torcella to the board of the state's public school employee retirement system, an entity Torcella actively sought to reform while in office. That's a report from the Philadelphia Inquirer. The appointment will require majority approval from the state Senate. So this individual, Joe Torcella, has a great reputation for integrity and for activism in government. So that's probably a good sign. We see that as a good sign. Former state health secretary and President Biden's nominee for assistant health secretary, Dr. Rachel Levine, was questioned about missing data or deaths in nursing homes during the COVID pandemic Senate confirmation hearing. That's a report from Spotlight. Levine also fielded inflammatory questions about gender transition therapies for youth from the U.S. Senator Rand Paul, Kentucky. Not exactly an impartial individual, not exactly a man who makes sense. He's one of those Republicans that we will be so happy to see walk away from the national scene, like Paul Ryan left. We don't know what happened to him. We haven't heard a word from Paul Ryan, former congressman, who did so much to promote Trump's agenda. So there's another guy here, Rand Paul. He's going to be around for a long time because he's not old yet. But oh my, he's somebody that I would contribute any amount of money to campaign against this guy. Get rid of him. Send him into retirement to be with his family and spend time away from Washington. So he's one. And Jim Jordan, Senator Kennedy that I already mentioned before. So anyway, approximately 42% of Philadelphia's COVID vaccine first doses have gone to suburban or other non-city residents, according to a report from WHYY. And remember that the city has opened vaccination centers that were promoted, announced extensively. The Aquara Center at Temple University, and FEMA is running one at the Convention Center on Broad Street. So there are places here, and even though apparently there are more vaccinations going out to the burbs than in the city. So that I think WHYY will probably have more on that. In response to the passage of a GOP-sponsored law that would ban him from hanging his trans and marijuana flags at the Capitol, Lieutenant Governor and U.S. Senator hopeful John Fetterman hung even bigger versions of the same banners. That's a report from the Hill. So we don't quite understand those news, but there we are. The Delaware River Basin Commission voted on Thursday to ban fracking along the Delaware River, making permanent a moratorium that has been in place since 2010, but which is currently being challenged in the courts. It's a report from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Yes, well, there will be a lot less support for that now that there's a new man in town in Washington. Reuters has a long-form analysis on whether the rift in the state's Republican Party over former President Donald Trump could hurt the party in elections. Well, we don't know if it would hurt the Republican Party. We know in Pennsylvania, but we know for sure that the Republican Party is hurting across the nation. So more on that later in another segment. It's unlikely Pennsylvania will legalize marijuana soon, in part because it lacks a statewide ballot initiative process, and any such bill must go through the legislature. Well, good luck getting anything through that group of people in Harrisburg. We need to replace those Republicans. Please, let's put some independents, some Democrats, some socialists. Get rid of the Republicans over there. All they do is block things, impede the way, impede progress, block rules and legislation that makes sense, that would benefit the public at large. They don't care. They have no real concern for the people. And all they want to do is protect their jobs. So, U.S. Representatives Mike Kelly of Butler and Scott Perry of York, both Republicans, will speak at the 2021 Conservative Political Action Conference, the CPAC, in Florida. So, one of the comments I saw earlier on, I think it was NBC, MSNBC, one of those, is that compared to other meetings of CPAC, this one doesn't have the cachet, doesn't have the appeal, doesn't have the names, because, well, it's the post-Trump era, in which many Trumpists are still believers, and many Republicans would like to expunge the Trump name from the party, as has been done with many buildings across the nation. We know that the last Trump building in Atlantic City just went down. And many buildings in New York, the owners have protested the Trump name on the facade of buildings. Anyway, talking about doing damage to your brand. Who wants the Trump brand? Who would attempt to sell Trump wines, or Trump line of clothing? I don't know. I guess that base that wear the MAGA hats, they're not really fashion icons either. So they would probably buy Trump's jackets, Trump's suits, Trump's hats. I don't know. It's a horrible looking hat anyway, that MAGA hat. So and you don't see many of those nowadays. I think they're all in deep, buried in closets or possibly in the trash. You don't see as many as we used to see. Not in the city of brotherly love, which, well, they were very popular here, but now they're like really totally extinguished. Even in neighborhoods where we know there was support for the former president. Yeah, that's my fashion statement for the day. MAGA hat, band, um, Trump clothing, Trump's line of clothing didn't go anywhere. Trump's university. Speaking of that, it's another item we'll address later because the Southern District of New York is going to be looking at everything Trump, from the university to the buildings to the tax reports. There's big trouble ahead. And that was another thing that we listened to this morning. Forgot who was speaking, but they said it's hard to believe that the Republicans in Washington know that Trump is not going to be running for president in 2024. He has a heap of trouble ahead. He's going to be surrounded in the next few months by lawyers on both sides. Let's hope he finds better lawyers than Giuliani or Michael Cohen, who told us all the things that Trump did. So, again, here we are. No matter what we talk about, where do we end? Where do we end up? Because it's still hanging around. How long? For how long? Is it because it's good copy? I don't know. Isn't this what Mr. Trump thought way back when he was a feature, a constant feature on page 6 of the New York Post? And he wanted to be there. He did everything possible to have his name in the papers. He could possibly be the most famous name in the world because his name has been everywhere for the last 4 years, in every newspaper, every television and radio outlet. But now that he doesn't have Twitter and he's been silenced in so many ways, limited to use proxy servers to spew his lies. So I don't know. There's a little bit of fatigue, Trump fatigue, and perhaps it will hit us suddenly and we'll stop talking about this guy. But here we are. There's a CPAC, there's huge controversy within the party. Liz Cheney opposes the appearance of Trump at CPAC. She says he should play no role in the future of the Republican Party. And then there is the other faction of Kevin McCarthy saying that Trump should speak and that Trump will play a role in the future of the party. We'll see who wins. We'll keep all of us informed about this CPAC meeting at which Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and other minor GOP figures will speak. Anyway, we are listening to Usa la Media, the Roundtable. Les habla Fernando Méndez. Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
Señoras y oyentes de USA la Media, La Mesa Redonda, estamos aquí de nuevo en nuestro programa hablando sobre varios temas. Les habla Fernando Méndez. Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Um, we were talking about Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth Court panel rules that applications for judicial vacancies are not protected under the state's right to know law, ruling against the Wolf administration and in favor of LNP Media Group. That's a report from Lancaster Online. State Representative Joe Ciresi, Democrat, 146th District, has been appointed to State House Committee with oversight over special education. A report from the Times Herald. Scranton City Controller John Murray will run for mayor of Scranton, according to the Times Tribune. Politics PA writes about State Senator Sharif Street, Democrat of Philadelphia, who plans to launch an exploratory committee in April regarding a potential run for the U.S. Senate. Well, it's like he has a recognizable last name. Remember the street years. Not many of us do not recall those years with fondness. It was an administration mired in controversy, and we know that he was being investigated, and he walked away unscathed. But people around him were in trouble. Anyway, now Sharif Street is running for the Senate. I don't know. We'll like to talk to him and see what he plans to do. Maybe we'll invite him to this program. Editorial pages, the Tribune Review critiques plans to hold federally mandated standardized tests later this year while the COVID pandemic effects are still being felt. The Inquirer asks a Philly business owner and the head of the Chester County Chamber of Commerce to weigh in on whether President Biden should lift the minimum wage. Minimum wage paid to restaurant workers is an insult. I mean, the minimum wage, nobody can survive on that kind of money. And even being paid the minimum wage of $15 per hour. Think about that. That's $100 a day, maybe 500 a week, and maybe in the best of cases it would be 30,000 a year. And that, for people living in the city, it's not enough. But if you pay the over $2 per hour as a minimum wage, and you earn $15,000 a year, that is really not a living wage. So, personally, I'm in favor of this being lifted. It's already being done in California and Florida. It doesn't kill business. They will manage somehow. So, it's justice. Pay that at the minimum wage, please. $15 an hour. So we'll see. We'll read what the Inquirer says about that. New bridge tolls will hurt the state's bus industry, according to an op-ed in Pennsylvania, Penn Life. Bridge tolls. Well, that's an outcry every time the bridge tolls go up 5 cents, 10 cents, a quarter, whatever. It's always an outcry about how this will cause damage to businesses, blah, blah, blah. So people will adjust and people will pay. And it's a matter of knowing whether or not they suffice to maintain the roads, to pay decent salaries, etc. The Inquirer's Trudy Rubin writes about how U.S. Senator Chris Coons, Democrat of Delaware, wants to build bipartisanship through foreign policy, specifically in relation to China. That's a good departure. It's a good point. Build bipartisanship in foreign policy. And that would make it more difficult for an administration to change the tone completely and turn around and make an enemy of people who have been our friends for decades. That's what's done in the previous administration. Again, there are echoes of what was done, the damage, the tremendous damage that was done to our foreign policy by the Trump administration, creating enemies where we had friends, making friends from people that should be confronted for their misdeeds, namely Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia. That Saudi Arabia relationship is complicated. As we know, the president just spoke to King Saud of Saudi Arabia in relation to the killing of Adnan Khashoggi, the journalist from the Washington Post, whose death was caused, planned, executed by the Crown Prince, bin Salman. And that's a tricky thing because there's a report coming out. And so I think the call to King Saud was probably a preemptive hit by the Biden administration, speaking to the king before releasing the report, which will name bin Salman as the main intellectual author of that killing. Khashoggi was killed just because he was reporting on the misdeeds of the Saudi leadership, especially bin Salman. So we'll wait to see what happens there. On national politics, Democrats suffer a major setback in their bid to push through a 15-hour minimum wage as part of President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus package, after the Senate's top rule enforcer said that the increase could not be included in the bill. Okay, it's not going to be there. And perhaps was a tactical error, strategic error on the part of the Democrats to include the $15 minimum wage as part of the rescue package. It should have done, as others recommended, as a separate bill. Just discuss the minimum wage in the context of wages and pull that away from the stimulus bill and deal with it in other ways. So we'll see what happens with that. But apparently, for the time being, the $15 minimum wage is set aside. The acting chief of the U.S. Capitol Police warned lawmakers that militia members involved in the January 6th riot, listen to this, militia members involved in the January 6th riot, that attempt to overturn our government, that attempt at a coup d'etat organized by Donald Trump, that people who participated in that, they want to blow up the Capitol while President Biden speaks to Congress. So that's a report from the Washington Post. This is this keeps giving. This attack, it has no end. And I love it that the Republicans say, move on, let's move away from that. And there are many people that I think are rational people, decent people, arguing that we should just move away from that, forget about that attack and concentrate on the future and the tremendous potential of the Biden administration to put an end to COVID, to change the direction of this country, to revive the economy, to reconnect us with our friends and allies in Europe and elsewhere. And I think we're going to have to do both. chew gum and walk at the same time. We can't do that. I think that, again, there is no way to overlook what happened on January 6th. There is no way to overlook that. And it's puzzling to see the people who were in the building when the building was attacked, Republicans. That was an attack on both parties. Remember that? Remember they wanted to hang Vice President Pence, and they wanted to kill Nancy Pelosi. That those elements are still around, that many of them left the Capitol that day and went back to their homes to plan further attacks. And that's what this report is about. That these people, the same people who wore army camouflage, who dressed like soldiers and attacked the Capitol in the name of Donald Trump, that they are planning to blow up the Capitol. And we know there were 2 bombs planted around the same time that never went off. But the police things they were put there as a distraction to weaken the forces in the Capitol that would resist the invasion. So that is not an insignificant bit of news. The people who did that on January 6th are still out there. They are somewhere planning to blow up the Capitol while President Biden addresses Congress. These are the people who follow Donald Trump. Donald J. Trump could stop them, and he could say, "Don't commit crimes in my name." But nobody hears Mr. Trump say anything to that point. On the contrary, if he had the ability right now to go on Twitter and urge them to do more, he would. He still thinks the election was stolen. Let me put it this way. He knows the election was not stolen, but he's still insisting on the fact that it was stolen because he has people contributing money to him. Where is that money going? The money is being used, will be used to defend Mr. Trump from his criminal activities, from taxes to the insurrection. The former president is a criminal, and the Southern District is about to prove that. Anyway, señores oyentes de USA la Media, les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando el tablero. Estamos aquí en la mesa redonda de Roundtable. Regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
Señores oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo en USA la Radio, La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable. Les habla Fernando Méndez, desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal, from the city of brotherly love. Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Bueno, estamos hablando sobre los estragos que causó la administración de Trump a este país, el daño que continúa haciendo sus gentes, sus seguidores, sus acólitos, la gente que planeó y ejecutó el ataque al Capitolio, están ahora planeando un nuevo ataque para, no sé, explotar bombas en el Capitolio cuando el presidente Biden llegue a hablarle al Congreso, a dos cámaras, and the state of the nation. Speaking of that, Mr. Biden had promised 100 vaccines, 100 million vaccines in 100 days. Many people criticize him right away. That more could be done, more than 100 million at a time when there was nothing, but that he was beginning the process, and he promised 100 million in 100 days, where he's way ahead of that count. In 1/4 of the time, he produced 50 million. So I think that he's gonna be way ahead of that count, and there are more vaccines coming. We have Pfizer, we have Moderna, we have Johnson & Johnson now joining, and this will increase the inventory, increase the speed of vaccination. I'm very, very optimistic. I mean, there's still people in my own family and people, friends and relatives, saying that this is going to be a very slow process, that nobody sees coming back to a normal life before the end of December of 2021. I don't know. Trump said by Christmas he would like to have, excuse me, he would like to have a different Christmas from 2020. He would like to celebrate Christmas. Let's hope. I would like to see that too. But there are people who are pessimistic, that they say, no, the vaccines, the vaccination process has moved slowly. A lot of problems. Philadelphia had a problem with a group of young people. We know that. You know that they initially they were a non-profit, and then the city found out they were for profit, and that was anyway. So that was a misstep, but that doesn't mean that we cannot move in the right direction. I think that now with more sites vaccinating people, University of Pennsylvania, Jefferson, Temple, FEMA, opening a site at the Pennsylvania Convention Center on Broad Street, that will move this forward. I think that it will pick up speed. And look, the world has changed. Wow, what a statement. The world has changed, really. In the last 100 years, since the pandemic of 1918, think about that, more than a century. The world has really moved ahead. Technology made it possible for us to have effective vaccines. We have seen Pfizer and Moderna and now J&J. That the expectation early on when the conversation began about vaccines was that we would not have a vaccine before 2 years or 3 years, with trials, that even 5 years was not necessarily a too long a period. It was done in record time, for which Mr. Trump has attempted to take credit, and his followers say like, yeah, but the vaccines came up during the end of the Trump administration thanks to him. Well, no, not man. Trump had zero to do with the research on vaccines. He, in fact, was an obstacle. He was a denier. Please, how can we change this topic and say vaccines? We have vaccines now. We're all positive. We're going to be okay. be not worried without thinking of the damage that Trump did. Okay? Because Morning Joe has an ongoing theme, an ongoing segment that anytime the theme comes up, they will play it from the beginning, when Trump denied the threat of COVID, when he said it would go away, when he suggested we inject Lysol into our veins, when he caught the virus and removed his mask, from all the times he refused to allow scientists to rule on this subject. Dr. Fauci was silenced because he openly disagreed with Trump. And now he says that openly. He says that, Dr. Fauci says, yes, I was silenced. I was not allowed to go on the Rachel Maddow show. So, no, Mr. Trump did not contribute in any way to the vaccine, period. It was Pfizer developing AstraZeneca in England, Moderna doing the investigations, compete with Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. It was in spite of, not being supported by Trump, in spite of Trump. So anyway, I think we will be okay. And I think I predict here, and I will speak about that when it happens, that progress, the total number of vaccinations, the percentage to reach that herd immunity will be reached sooner than expected. I dare to say June, July on the outside, okay? And if I'm wrong, by the end of July, I would say, here we are at the end of July and we still are not where we expected to be. If all things move forward the way they are right now, we will have herd immunity by then, and which, according to Trump, was herd mentality. Anyway, one other item in the news, Mitch McConnell says Biden's government has made it easy for the GOP to unite. In the meantime, there is a civil war within the party, McCarthy, McConnell versus Cheney allies. McConnell says the progressives are making Nancy Pelosi's life difficult, and he says the Democrats are making it easy for the GOP to be together, but they are not. The GOP is the do-nothing party. They are simply trying to obstruct, as they did during the Obama administration, and they continue to do that. Do nothing on minimum wage, do nothing about COVID relief, do nothing about campaign reform, do nothing about the insurrection of January 6th, do not investigate, keep moving, forget about it. Do not prosecute Donald Trump. So anyway, but now the U.S. Attorney's Office in DC is investigating members of Congress who might have given tours of the Capitol to people who were involved in the insurrection. Let's remember that many members of Congress expressed surprise that tours were being given prior to the invasion. So the Capitol Police Chief, the big news of the day, and we are trustworthy news, the big news of the day is that the insurrectionists are still planning to blow up the Capitol. And with that, we thank you for joining us today. Señores oyentes de Usala Media, de Roundtable, agradecemos mucho su atención el día de hoy. Se despide Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Los esperamos aquí. Hasta la próxima.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.